The hospital never truly slept. It was 3:47 a.m., and even in the stillest corridors of Eastbridge Medical, there was a low hum that never faded. Monitors beeping faintly, vents clicking, distant coughs carried through linoleum hallways. Nurse Lena Marlowe stood at the end of the ICU corridor, arms folded, leaning lightly against the doorframe of room 304. Her final night shift was almost over. She checked her watch, just over 2 hours left. Lena had worked these graveyard shifts for the last 3 years, and tonight was her last. Her transfer papers were signed, her apartment was already packed. By noon tomorrow she'd be halfway to her new position at a private hospital in Charlotte, closer to her sister, away from the cold, concrete stillness of Eastbridge. She smiled quietly at the thought, not out of excitement, but exhaustion. She hadn't slept properly in days. Maybe she didn't want to. Across from her, the break room door creaked open. Marissa, a younger nurse in her first year, peeked out holding a paper cup. "Still here?" "Unfortunately," Lena said, standing upright. "You good with the night meds?" Marissa nodded, blowing on the steam. "Yeah, just gave 307 their dose. That guy's weird. Kept asking for you, though." Lena's eyes paused for a second. "He did?" Marissa shrugged. "Yeah. Just mumbled your name and said she always comes in alone. Didn't feel like it meant anything." Lena forced a neutral smile and turned away. "Thanks. I'll do one last round, then clock out." She didn't say anything more about room 307, but her feet didn't carry her there either. She began walking the opposite way, clipboard in hand, boots echoing faintly on the cold tile. There were things she wouldn't miss. The flickering lights above the elevator, the coffee that always tasted like wet cardboard, the isolation of treating patients who barely spoke. But tonight felt heavier, like the building didn't want her to leave. She passed the supply closet, peered into a darkened exam room, and eventually returned to the nurse's station. She stood there quietly, flipping through her patient charts, before noticing something strange. Her locker was slightly ajar. It wasn't wide open, just enough for the metal door to sit loose, maybe pushed by someone, maybe not closed all the way. She approached it cautiously, glancing around the empty corridor. No one. She opened it. Inside was her usual bag, navy blue, soft leather, a birthday gift from her sister. It was where she kept her basic tools: stethoscope, notepad, bandages, a small tin of Tylenol. Everything appeared undisturbed. Lena unzipped the bag. She checked the inside pocket. Still there, her ID badge clipped to the lining, shift logs, her key card, a folded note from a patient she once helped in 2021, all of it exactly where she left it. But something felt off. She zipped it back up and closed the locker, this time making sure it clicked shut. She didn't want to admit it, not even to herself, but she'd been feeling like someone had been inside her things for weeks. Little changes, pins moved, her charger missing, then reappearing. Nothing big enough to report, but enough to notice. Lena let out a tired breath. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe she was projecting. Maybe she didn't want to say goodbye to a place she never liked in the first place. She returned to her final rounds. At 5:42 a.m. her shift officially ended. By then, she'd handed over patient logs, signed her final chart, and even accepted a stale cupcake from Marissa, who gave her a hug in the break room before rushing off to deal with a code yellow. Lena laughed weakly, stuffing the cupcake into her pocket like it mattered. By 6:05 a.m. she walked through the rear exit doors, the ones only staff us. Had no cameras in that hallway. She pushed through the metal door and stepped into the dawn-chilled air of the staff-only parking lot behind the hospital. A cracked sign on the fence read, "Staff Permit Parking Only, Eastbridge Medical." It was a quiet zone, meant for overnight staff. No patients ever came here. The asphalt was uneven, cracked in some places, with weeds poking through. To the far right sat a rusted dumpster, half covered with a blue tarp, and beyond that, a chain-link fence where old maintenance tools were stored behind a padlocked gate. Lena's car was parked in spot number 19. She headed toward it. She never made it. The sun crept over the Eastbridge skyline as the early morning shift shuffled in through the staff entrance. It was a Thursday, unremarkable by most accounts. Patients stirred under thin blankets, coffee brewed in chipped white pots, and the elevator near the ICU hummed its usual tired tune. By 8:20 a.m., Marissa Jennings, the new recruit, was halfway through her first report handoff when the head nurse, Julia Reynolds, tapped her clipboard. "Hey," Julia said, squinting. "Where's Lena's exit signature?" Marissa blinked. "She left at 6, said goodbye, even took a cupcake." "Right, but her chart doesn't show a clock out or final sign-off." Julia tapped again. "There should be a discharge notation here." Marissa frowned, now uncertain. "She was headed out when I saw her. Maybe she forgot to log?" "She's not the type," Julia muttered. "Let me check security." That was the first ripple. By noon, Lena's relocation coordinator had tried, and failed, to reach her. 3 missed calls, no reply to the confirmation email. A voicemail was left, formal and polite. By 4:15 p.m., Lena's sister Erin called the hospital directly from Charlotte. "She never came," Erin said, voice tight. "She was supposed to be here by 2. Security was formally notified at 5:02 p.m. A hospital-wide staff ping went out at 5:35. By 6:10 p.m., a general search was underway, first internally, then on the premises. Her car was still in spot number 19 of the Spaues, a staff-only lot. It sat quietly beneath a dusty maple tree, pollen dusted thick across the windshield. Her driver's side mirror was folded in, likely from another staff member squeezing past during night parking. The doors were locked, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle. The cup of gas station coffee inside was still half full, cold. By 7:30 p.m., the Eastbridge Police Department was called in. Detective Alana Bright was the one who answered. Calm, composed, known for her methodical approach to missing person cases. She arrived on site around 8:10 p.m., walking slowly through the rear exit doors of the hospital. "I want the footage," she told security. They pulled up the logs. Lena had exited the ICU hallway at 6:04 a.m. The grainy black and white footage showed her pushing the stairwell door open. She looked alert, maybe a little tired, but normal. She paused briefly, adjusting her bag or pulling something from her pocket. It wasn't clear. Then the door shut behind her. That was the last visual. The stairwell cam was a dummy, never wired in. The exterior lot camera? Reported offline since March 18th. Maintenance had been notified but never scheduled the fix. "Low priority," one staff member said. "That lot's barely used." "Well," Alana muttered, "it was used that morning." A light rain began to fall as the search expanded. Canvassing teams swept the hospital perimeter. Maintenance closets, laundry chutes, boiler rooms. No sign of Lena, no bag, no badge, no uniform. Her locker remained locked. Security left it sealed out of protocol. Her supervisor confirmed she had signed over her charts but hadn't submitted her final clearance form. "She wouldn't have skipped that," Julia Reynolds repeated. "She was organized, quiet, but never careless." The police filed an official missing person report by midnight. The next morning, flyers were printed. Her ID, photo was used, flat lighting, no smile, standard scrubs. It wasn't flattering, but it was recent. Posters went up at the front desk, in the ER waiting area, and inside the nurse's lounge. One staffer quietly removed hers from the vending machine hallway. "Don't want to scare the patients," he muttered. Whispers grew louder over the next few days. She didn't seem okay that week. She told me she had weird dreams about the stairwell. "I saw her in the utility hall one night just staring at the wall." She said room 307 gave her chills. None of it was official, but it fed the air of dread that had begun to settle over the staff. By the 4th day, no one wanted to use the rear exit. Even the janitors avoided the staff lot after dark. It was mostly psychological. There were no confirmed dangers, no confirmed anything. But Lena's name had become a silent presence. Her car remained parked. By the 6th day, her sister arrived in person. Erin stood by the car, touching the hood lightly as if it might still be warm. She didn't cry, not there. She just asked if she could retrieve Lena's belongings from her locker. Security denied it. The investigation was ongoing. "I just want her stethoscope," she said softly. She carried it everywhere. Detective Bright dug deeper. Lena's phone had pinged one final time at 6:08 a.m., just outside the building. After that, nothing. Either it had been powered off or destroyed. Her social media was inactive. No suspicious texts, no dating apps. She wasn't on any medications, no psychiatric history, no financial stressors. One minor note, she had emailed HR 3 weeks earlier, requesting to shift her final transfer date forward by a week. No reason listed. The HR rep remembered she looked a little on edge that day, but not unwell. She said she just wanted to get out sooner if possible. The request was denied. The hospital was short-staffed. By the 10th day, people stopped talking about her. The posters faded. Another nurse started using her locker. Her mug disappeared from the break room counter. The day. Shift rotated, and Lena became just a checkbox on a report. Unresolved disappearance. Status pending. Only Marissa, the new nurse, still looked toward the stairwell every morning when she passed. And sometimes, just sometimes, she swore she heard the door creak behind her, even when no one else was on that floor. 3 weeks passed. The nurses at Eastbridge Medical stopped mentioning Lena's name. Her photos were quietly taken down. The receptionist replaced the missing poster near the front window with a flu season PSA. Only the ghost of her absence remained, in the way conversations faltered when someone asked, "Didn't she work nights?" or the sudden hush when a new staff member asked about locker number 312. The official investigation slowed. Leads went cold. Nothing more came from security, no sightings, no camera glitches, no weird car activity from the staff parking lot. Even the detectives didn't know where to push next. She just walked out and disappeared, one of the guards said during a shift change. People vanish in cities all the time. But this wasn't a city street. This was inside a hospital. Sterile, secured, lit by fluorescent tubes. Nurses didn't vanish here. Not like that. Not from within their own hallways. Detective Bright visited one last time in mid-April. She walked the corridor again, alone this time. Her shoes echoed against the linoleum as she passed the staff lounge, the medicine cart station, the door to the service stairwell, the last place Lena had been seen. She ran her hand along the push bar. The cold steel gave nothing away. Down in the parking lot, the air smelled faintly of cut grass and car exhaust. Lena's car was finally towed by her sister, but spot number 19 still sat oddly empty for days, as if no one wanted to take it. There was no new evidence, not even rumors now. The staff had emotionally moved on, if not mentally. P.E. Opal were tired, overworked, rotating in and out of 12-hour shifts. Patients came and went. The hospital had its rhythm again. But some details stayed wrong. One evening, just before shift change, Marissa found something small under the nurse's station. It was a plastic pen cap, broken, with faint bite marks on the end, the kind Lena used to chew on when filling out charts. It could have been anyone's, sure, nurses wrote constantly, but something about the shade of blue, the faint perfume that lingered on the plastic, made Marissa pause. She looked around. The station was empty. The night nurse hadn't arrived yet. She picked up the pen cap, turned it over, and quietly placed it in her locker without telling anyone. She didn't know why. By May, a new hire filled Lena's old position. Her name was Natalie Cho, 31, former ER nurse from Pittsburgh. Bright, cheerful, efficient, she brought a plant to the break room, talked about her dog, laughed at bad jokes, but she never parked in the staff lot. "Too far from the elevator," she said once, shrugging. "Besides, it's creepy back there." People nodded, half agreeing. The truth was no one liked walking near that gate anymore, especially not alone. The weeds had grown taller in the corners. A rusted shovel leaned against the fence for days, unnoticed. One of the lights had blown out, flickering on and off for a week before someone replaced it. On a humid evening in June, a maintenance worker came back from the lot during smoke break and said to no one in particular, "I swear I saw something move behind the dumpster." On the 6th Monday since Lena vanished, a patient from room 302 was found wandering near the staff wing stairwell. He was elderly, confused, prone to nighttime wandering, but what he said gave everyone pause. "I saw her," he whispered. "The nurse. The one with the tired eyes. She was trying to speak, but her voice wouldn't come." The attending dismissed it as a hallucination, probably triggered by his meds, but the charge nurse documented the statement. Anyway, that was hospital protocol. Not all staff dismissed things so easily. A young orderly named Tyrese started bringing a flashlight with him during his cleaning rounds near the back stairs. "Not 'cause I'm scared," he told another tech, "just don't like shadows that don't match anything." In the staff break room, someone taped over Lena's old locker with a laminated sign, "Do not use, locked for inventory hold." It was a lie. There was no inventory inside, only her bag. Even Julia Reynolds, the hard-nosed head nurse, was beginning to unravel. She started coming in early, very early, before the sun. Sometimes she would stand at the nurse's station long before anyone else arrived, staring down the hallway toward the stairwell like she expected something to appear. "I should have walked her to the door," she muttered once. "That's all it would have taken." No one responded. In the first week of July, the State Board formally classified Lena Marlowe as a cold case. Her file was archived, her employee profile deactivated, her badge number retired. And yet, the mystery remained. Where could she have gone? How did a nurse, mid-shift in a well-lit, monitored building, simply walk out and cease to exist? There was no ransom, no note, no sign of depression, no background of violence. She wasn't even particularly visible on social media. Her last public post was a quote from a paperback novel about vanishing into the ordinary. That same week, the night shift janitor, Roman, was cleaning near the back stairwell when his mop bucket tipped over. As he bent to retrieve it, he noticed something wedged between the door frame and the floor tiles, a folded corner of something dark blue, like a strap or cloth edge. He reached down and tugged gently, but it didn't move. The piece seemed stuck, as if compressed into the floor seam. He debated pulling harder. The lights flickered, and he heard a cough from the empty hallway, and for some reason his hands went cold. Roman stood, grabbed his bucket, and walked away without checking again. By mid-August, Eastbridge Medical had found its rhythm again. The halls still buzzed with early morning report-outs, crash carts rolled at 2 a.m., and night shift techs played lo-fi music just low enough to not wake patients. It was easy, in that flow, to forget that someone had ever vanished from these same floors. And yet, forgetting Lena wasn't easy for everyone, especially not for Marissa. It had been nearly 5 months, but sometimes, during quiet hours, she found herself pausing in the middle of charting, wondering whether she'd ever said anything strange to Lena that night. Had she seemed nervous? Rushed? Was there something in her eyes Marissa had missed? She couldn't remember. That was the worst part. Memories fade quickly when you're tired every day. At 3:12 a.m. on a slow Sunday, the ICU monitor flatlined for room 206. It was an old man who had been fading for weeks. The staff moved quickly but gently, wrapping cords, logging charts, contacting next of kin. Just another night. But as Julia Reynolds passed the back stairwell on her way down to get a grief folder, she stopped. The door was slightly ajar. That door was always closed, locked from the inside unless manually propped. She stepped toward it. The hallway beyond was dark, only the amber glow of the exit sign giving shape to the concrete. She pushed it open wider and stood still for a moment. A cool breeze met her cheek, strange in such a tightly sealed building. The lights flickered, but that was nothing new. She stepped back. She didn't mention it to anyone. But that next morning she told maintenance to check the door's hydraulic arm. Elsewhere in the hospital, Natalie Cho was adjusting to the team well, though she stayed away from the back lot. "That lot gives me migraines," she told Marissa over coffee. "It's weird, right? How quiet it is, like something's just waiting out to hear." Marissa gave a weak smile. "You're not the only one." In the cafeteria, talk of the missing nurse occasionally bubbled up again. A new intern asked if the case was solved. "No," someone replied. "She just left and never came back." "I heard she was pregnant," someone whispered. "That's not true," Julia said sharply from the coffee line, "and it's inappropriate to speculate." There was a long silence. On the hospital intranet, the HR department posted a reminder for annual employee locker cleanouts. Staff were encouraged to empty and sanitize all non-assigned lockers before the audit date. Locker number 312, Lena's, was still sealed. Marissa watched as the facilities manager walked past it with a clipboard, hesitating. But then he marked it, "Hold for investigation," and moved on. It hadn't been touched in nearly 6 months. Then came the day that shifted something again. A retired schoolteacher named Karen Mueller was admitted for a routine knee replacement. Her recovery was smooth, her spirits high. She joked with the techs, thanked every nurse by name, and asked thoughtful questions about the machines monitoring her vitals. She also asked, 3 days into her stay, if room 302 had ever had incidents. Julia, surprised, asked what she meant. "I just heard noises, not creepy ones, more like someone pacing, just soft, at night." "There's no one in the room next to yours." Karen smiled. "I know, that's why I asked. It was nothing, probably ventilation." But a few nights later, Marissa walked past 302 on her way to deliver a late med, and paused. She heard it too. A slow drag, almost like a slipper shuffle, back and forth. She opened the door. Nothing. The room was empty, dimly lit, cool. The curtains swayed slightly from the draft. The window was sealed, no sign of entry. The hallway beyond was quiet. She stood there a moment too long before pulling the door shut. That same night, a patient from across the hall complained about a thumping sound. When asked to describe it, he just said, like someone moving boxes. But there was no storage unit nearby, just the wall, and beyond it, the old mechanical access path that led toward the edge of the staff parking lot. No one had used that corridor in years. It was walled off, rerouted during the East Wing renovation. Some believed it still had an access grate leading down beneath the lot, part of the original drainage channel. In the staff lounge, a debate started. What if Lena never left the hospital? Not that she was inside now, but that she never truly made it out. "She could have fallen somewhere," a respiratory tech said, voice low, "like an old shaft, one of those vents they sealed during construction. If you fell in and no one heard." Julia, who had been standing nearby, quietly exited the lounge without a word. That week, security noticed that the service gate near the staff parking lot had a broken latch. It didn't lead to anything important, just a side panel that once provided emergency access to the sub-basement utility run. The last inspection on it was 2 years ago, technically sealed. The lock rusted from weather, but the gate had shifted, not by much, maybe wind, maybe someone pulled at it from the inside. They filed a note for maintenance, non-urgent. In Marissa's dream that night, she saw Lena. She was standing near the hospital's rear fence, just inside the staff parking lot. Her uniform was soaked, dirty, but she looked calm. Her eyes were open and tired. She didn't move. She just stood there, one hand loosely holding her bag, the soft leather one with the cracked handle and stitched front pocket. When Marissa awoke, she couldn't remember if Lena had said anything. But she remembered one thing clearly. There was dirt under Lena's fingernails, a lot of it. It was a Monday morning when the discovery was made. The air was heavy with early autumn humidity, and the back lot behind Eastbridge Medical looked even more lifeless than usual. Weeds leaned against rusted rails. The dumpster groaned in the heat, and beyond the yellow-striped staff parking spaces, the far corner, behind the out-of-service maintenance shed, remained untouched. No one parked there anymore, except for visitors who didn't know better. Grace Lynn, 61, was one of them. She had arrived early for her husband's outpatient dialysis appointment. After circling the full visitor lot, she turned where the older sign read, "Staff only beyond this point," figuring one space wouldn't matter just for an hour or two. She parked next to a cracked curb and noticed the uneven slope beside the dumpster. Something had been dumped in the overgrowth there, something that didn't quite match the weeds and trash bags. She stepped out of her car and walked over. It was a bag, black leather, worn down, partially sun-faded, torn slightly on one corner. The front pocket was stitched with a red thread, uneven and hand-repaired. She knew what this was. She had seen that photo in the news 6 months ago. She pulled her phone from her purse and called the hospital front desk. Within 30 minutes, the lot was blocked off. Police arrived fast, followed by hospital security, then Julia Reynolds, her face pale, clipboard forgotten. Detective Bright showed up within the hour. They didn't touch the bag right away. Photos were taken first. Evidence gloves were put on. Then a small team carefully lifted it from the dirt. It had been partially buried, as if someone had tried to hide it, or nature had done the job slowly, inch by inch, over months of rain, dust, and time. Inside the bag, a stethoscope, scuffed but intact. 2 foil blister packs of ibuprofen tablets, slightly water-damaged, a roll of bandage gauze, still sealed. A small journal, spiral-bound, cover warped. 1 plastic ID badge, faded, but that's E-name still readable. L. Marlowe. There was no blood, no torn fabric, no personal effects beyond what a nurse might reasonably carry during a shift. But it was hers. The discovery hit like a thunderclap. The staff lounge fell quiet. Rumors reignited. Questions flooded every hallway. Why was her bag out there? Was she trying to leave? Did someone follow her? Julia sat in her office that afternoon, staring at the wall. She wouldn't have left that bag behind, she finally whispered to Marissa. That bag was like her anchor. She brought it everywhere. She even stitched it herself. Marissa nodded slowly. It still had her stethoscope. Detective Bright returned to the hospital that evening. She walked the path from the back stairwell exit to the edge of the staff lot. It wasn't a long walk, just 90 steps. A camera covered the central area, but the corner where the bag was found, a blind spot. Worse, the exact angle was one of the few not visible from any current security feed. You'd have to know where to leave it, she muttered, or you'd have to stumble. She radioed her team. Check storm drain schematics, anything that lets you reach that far corner from below. That night, hospital staff gathered in small groups. The theory wheels began turning again. I bet someone inside knew something. She was planning to leave, wasn't she? Maybe she got cornered. No. What if she was looking for something, or someone? Natalie Cho found herself staring at the bag's picture on her phone, unable to sleep. Something about it bothered her deeply. Not just that it was found, but where. That spot had been avoided by everyone for months. There were even rumors staff told new hires not to go out there, as if the air was heavier, the light colder. And yet, someone had left the bag there. Julia called Lena's sister. The conversation was short. Erin didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just said, "Please don't send the bag to me, not yet." Maintenance staff were ordered to clean the lot's perimeter. Roman, the night janitor, was back on duty. He stood near the spot where the bag had been found, mop bucket by his side, the yellow caution sign flopped over behind him. He stared at the weeds, at the slope, at the small rocks and dry mud. Then something strange occurred to him. The ground was flatter now. 6 months ago, when he'd come out for a smoke in the spring, he remembered stepping awkwardly along a small rise, almost tripping. That rise wasn't there anymore. He bent down and looked closer. The dirt had been disturbed. He could see it now, slightly darker, looser soil, like it had been recently moved. A sudden chill passed through him. He stood up and backed away slowly. By morning, Detective Bright had requested access to all prior maintenance reports. One file stood out, dated February 19th, 2 weeks before Lena vanished. A leaking water main near the staff lot had caused temporary softening in the ground. A plumber had been scheduled, but the request was later marked as resolved without confirmation. The records stopped there. Bright made a note. Possible crawl access? Incomplete patchwork? Meanwhile, Julia paced the second-floor hallway, hands clenched behind her back. She stopped at the stairwell again. 6 months ago, Lena had walked through this door, down this stairwell, and vanished. Now, her bag had reappeared. Not inside the building, not by her car, but in the very place everyone had avoided. She closed her eyes and said aloud, to no one. She didn't forget that bag. She didn't drop it. It was placed. Down in the lot, the wind picked up. Dust swirled near the edge of the dumpster, briefly revealing a cracked storm grate half covered in weeds. And beneath it, a sliver of black fabric, almost invisible. Waiting. The staff parking lot was quiet again, but it didn't feel like silence. It felt like breath-holding, like the entire rear wing of Eastbridge Medical had become a place people tiptoed through. Nurses walked faster when heading to their cars. Maintenance staff avoided sweeping the far edge. Even the breeze that moved through the broken fence slats carried something sharp. Lena Marlowe's bag had been removed days ago, and yet it felt like something still lingered. Detective Bright returned on a Wednesday. Her tone was different now, less procedural, more alert. "Someone left the bag here recently," she told hospital admin in a closed-door meeting. "We've reviewed drone footage of the lot from 3 weeks prior. That bag wasn't there." "Why now?" Julia asked. Bright hesitated. "We don't know, but someone either buried it months ago and disturbed it recently, or placed it there to be found." She ordered ground-penetrating radar scans around the lot's southern wall near the base of the old mechanical tunnel that had once connected the basement to the original boiler system. The crew found unusual air pockets beneath the soil, collapsed piping or makeshift crawl space, they couldn't tell, but something man-made existed down there, something that wasn't on any current hospital blueprint. "That tunnel's been sealed for years," a facilities manager argued. "Sealed on paper," Bright replied. "Reality may differ." The hospital kept its operations moving above ground, but below, a different kind of search had begun. That evening, Marissa stood outside by the caution tape, staring at the area where Lena's bag had rested. She noticed something odd. The lot sloped downward in a way she'd never paid attention to before. If someone had tried to walk that patch at night, it would have been slippery, easy to twist an ankle or stumble. She walked along the edge, stopped near the drain grate, and crouched. It was sealed shut with rust, but something beneath it caught her eye. Faint glimmers of red stitching, the same kind Lena had used on her bag pocket. She stepped back, and this time she called someone. The following morning, search crews arrived. They cut open the grate and descended carefully. The space below was tight, less than 4 feet in height but long, a narrow channel from the original 1960s utility build, repurposed over the years for nothing, then forgotten. It stretched about 30 feet beneath the lot. At the far end, they found a discarded latex glove, torn and moldy, a cracked flashlight, and a second metal badge clip, no card attached. Most notably, there were scratch marks on the wall, uneven, shallow, but human-made. And then the kicker, one faded nurse's shoe, lodged near a patch of loose soil. Julia came down to the scene hours later. When the tech held up the shoe in an evidence bag, she sat down on the curb. "I bought her those," she whispered. Across the hospital, Lena's name returned to conversations, but now in lower tones, with dread in every syllable. The idea that she may have gotten trapped underneath the building, within reach of the place she worked every day, rattled everyone. Natalie Cho stopped using the south entrance altogether. "I keep thinking I'll see her if I look too long," she admitted to Marissa, "and I don't know if I'd be scared or relieved." Security was increased in the rear of the hospital. Fencing was added. Exterior access points near the lot were locked down. But questions still spread like infection. Who had known about the tunnel? Why hadn't the hospital accounted for it? And why, after all this time, had Lena's things just begun appearing? On Friday night, just before shift change, an orderly was wheeling a med cart down the hall when he dropped a clipboard. As he bent to pick it up, the stairwell door across from him creaked open half an inch. There was no one behind it. He stood slowly and walked toward the door. The air behind it was cold, unnaturally so, and it smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else. Wet dirt. He closed the door firmly, backed away, and didn't mention it to anyone for hours. Detective Bright held a press briefing 2 days later. No body had been found. No suspect had been named. But she confirmed that the items recovered, Lena's bag, her shoe, her badge clip, had all been authenticated. Their conditions suggested exposure to moisture, decay, and time. Then she said something that made even seasoned staff stiffen. "We are now treating the case as an active confinement or disposal event, meaning Lena may have been placed, either deceased or alive, within a non-obvious hospital structure." She paused. Someone may have known exactly where no one would look. Back in the staff lounge, Marissa stared at a poster above the sink. It was faded from years of cleaner spray, but she'd seen it 1,000 times. "Safety is everyone's responsibility." She suddenly felt nauseous. Because for months, all of them, the entire hospital, had walked over, beside, and near the place Lena's last presence now pointed to. Her bag, her shoe, her last breath, and no one had noticed. Outside, the weather turned gray. Wind blew hard across the staff lot, and just beneath the storm grate, a tiny shape shifted in the loose dirt, a glint of something glassy. It would be found 2 days later. It belonged to Lena, and it still smelled faintly like lavender. The discovery came quietly. A maintenance worker named Darnell was clearing brush near the same lot 2 days after the shoe was recovered. He wasn't part of any official search, just a man trying to do his job and stay out of the mess. He didn't expect to find anything, but there, half buried in the mud beneath the storm grate, caught in the curled root of a creeping weed, was something small, smooth, translucent. A glass badge holder, cracked on one edge, streaked with soil, but unmistakable in shape. Inside it, no photo, just a fragment of laminated paper with faint lettering, Arlo-Ui, and something else, a faint scent, lavender. Detective Bright held the object in gloved hands under hospital lights. "Did she wear perfume?" she asked Marissa. "She did," Marissa said quietly, "but not strong, just soft, barely there." Bright nodded. "And you're sure it was lavender?" "It was called winter lavender, I think. She kept it in a drawer near the break room microwave. People teased her, said the scent didn't match how serious she looked." Bright smiled once, briefly. "She sounded like someone worth finding." "She was," Marissa said. With this final object confirmed, the investigative team began reconstructing a possible sequence. Lena Marlowe left the hospital floor at 3:17 a.m., scheduled to go home. She descended the south stairwell, not the elevator. She exited toward the back staff lot, possibly planning to use her car. But she never reached her car. It was never unlocked. No prints were found. Instead, her bag ended up in the weeds, her shoe underground, her ID under mud. Everything pointed to one small corner of the world, a space beneath the hospital, forgotten by time, and maybe by choice. Rumors at Eastbridge grew darker. Some staff wondered aloud, did someone lead her there? Others feared worse. Was she trying to help someone? A patient? A colleague? A stranger? Julia didn't join in. She had taken leave, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She sat in her apartment with her blinds drawn, staring at the same news article she'd seen weeks earlier. Nurse still missing as new clues emerge, but the clues weren't new. They were just old things people had ignored. At the hospital, hallway bulletin boards filled with new posters, workplace safety, mental health support, reminders for late shift escorts to parking areas. But for many, it felt hollow. Because the truth was simple and heavy, Lena had gone missing under their feet, and nobody had noticed, not security, not management, not even her closest friends. That weekend, Marissa took a Wacom LK. She passed the place where Lena's bag had been. She stood over the grate where her badge had turned up. She stared at the tunnel entrance that had been sealed shut once again. Everything was back in its place. Except Lena. She saw something then, something that chilled her in a way no dark stairwell ever had. On the fencing beside the sealed tunnel, someone had tied a blue ribbon, just one, faded from rain. It hadn't been there yesterday. Security reviewed footage. Nothing, just static. 1 2-minute gap in the file where the angle pointed toward the fencing. No movement, no face. Just blank. Almost like the ribbon had appeared on its own. Detective Bright, when informed, sighed. "Sometimes people memorialize in private. But no one knew we were resealing that tunnel," a tech responded. "We didn't post anything." Bright looked at him. "Exactly." Forensics returned their final assessment. Lena's bag, shoe, and ID showed no signs of forced removal, no dragging, no tearing, no blood. Items were placed, not discarded. Whoever left them, Bright said, knew exactly how long it would take for someone to find them, and where to put them. There was something surgical about it. That night, in the hospital break room, Natalie found an envelope tucked into the side of the vending machine. No name on it, just one thing inside. a printed photograph. Grainy, zoomed in. It showed a dark shape entering the lot, carrying what looked like a shoulder bag. The timestamp read, May 28th. 3 months after Lena vanished, Natalie dropped the photo. Because on that day, nobody had reported anything. And the camera it came from? That unit had been out of order. She brought the envelope to Julia, who had finally returned to work. Julia stared at the image for a long time. "That's her bag," she whispered. "And that shape?" Natalie leaned in. "You recognize them?" Julia didn't answer. She just folded the photo back inside the envelope and placed it in her drawer. In the final week of September, hospital admin called a full staff meeting. As the tunnels were now sealed with concrete, security doubled, and a new plaque was quietly installed at the edge of the staff lot. In memory of Lena Marlowe, a dedicated healer who never left our hearts, people clapped. A few cried. But when the meeting ended, most went back to work, because patients still needed tending. And questions, as always, went unanswered. Outside, the wind lifted the blue ribbon tied to the fence. It fluttered once, curled, and dropped. Somewhere beneath the earth, concrete hardened over a tunnel, and just beyond it, under layers of dirt and silence, something else waited. It had been nearly 7 months since Lena Marlowe disappeared, and yet her absence pressed down on the halls of Eastbridge Medical like humidity in August. Felt, not seen, but impossible to ignore. The plaques had been hung, the tunnels sealed, security systems replaced, reports filed and shelved, but nobody was really breathing easier, because no one, not even Detective Bright, could say what had happened to Lena, only what had been found. On October 3rd, at 2:10 a.m., the night shift desk nurse, Pauline, glanced at the monitor showing the south stairwell. A small motion alert blinked on screen. She looked up. Nothing. Just grainy black and white footage of a stairwell bathed in emergency light. She turned back to her charting, but not before marking the alert with a digital note. Phantom trigger, no movement. She didn't know that 2 minutes later the same motion alert blinked again, and then a third time. And that each time the file auto-saved to a backup drive, the one that wasn't monitored in real time. Marissa had stopped walking past the south lot. She had tried, twice, to return to the space where Lena's bag was found, to confront the place that still felt like it was holding a secret. But each time, she froze. Just one pee from the bend in the concrete, where the old shed used to lean, before they tore it down. There was no logical reason why that patch of asphalt felt colder than the rest of the lot, but it did. Julia, meanwhile, had begun making long drives out of the city on weekends, not to avoid things, just to breathe. She took Lena's sister Erin once, and the two sat for an hour beside a lake, saying nothing. At one point, Erin asked softly, "Do you think she knew something? Something she wasn't supposed to?" Julia's jaw tightened. "Or maybe," she replied, "she saw something she wasn't supposed to." They left it at that. Detective Bright was officially off the case by mid-October. Too many dead ends, too little evidence. But unofficially, she kept in touch. She reviewed the missing footage herself. She checked the timestamps again and again. She visited Eastbridge one last time, didn't speak to anyone, just walked the halls. And before she left, she passed a staff bulletin board near the break room. Pushed under the clutter of health flyers and shift change schedules was a faded photo. Lena, laughing, arm around a coworker, pinned with a green paper clip, the kind the hospital stopped using 3 years ago. The administration wanted things to return to normal. They said Lena's story had run its course, that it was time for healing, that the hospital had moved forward, but the staff knew better. They knew that the building itself still remembered. In the odd draft that passed through the west corridor, in the way motion sensors sometimes blinked at 3:17 a.m., in the low hum that echoed from beneath the floor on cold nights. Some memories were stitched into walls, and Eastbridge had started to feel haunted, not by ghosts, but by what it missed. Then came the final ripple. A nurse intern named Elena was organizing an unused file drawer in the sub-basement record room, a cramped space below radiology rarely visited. She pulled out a folder labeled Jan Mar Staff Scheduling, nearly discarded it, then noticed something odd. Inside were printed time logs from February 28th, Lena's last shift. But one copy had handwriting on it, not Lena's. A name circled, A. Keene, and a short note beneath it hastily scribbled, "Doesn't belong here. Cross-check with security." Elena brought the file upstairs. Nobody had heard that name. The hospital pulled archived logs, cross-referenced IDs. No record of any A. Keene employed, contracted, or visiting on that day. But a temporary visitor badge had been issued at 2:48 a.m. Name, Andrew Keene. Purpose, facilities inspection. Authorized by Field Blank. It was never returned. Whoever he was, he had walked the building during Lena's final hour. He had accessed the staff wing. And then, nothing. No follow-up, no flag, no inquiry. Until now. Marissa sat with Julia that night. They didn't talk much, just sat in the break room, door slightly ajar, the hum of the vending machine between them. Julia finally broke the silence. "If he was here," she said, "and she crossed paths with him, she would have helped," Marissa said. "That's who she was." Julia nodded. "She helped the wrong person." The investigation was quietly reopened. No press this time, no announcement. But Lena's name re-entered official records, and in the dark archive basement, the file labeled Marlowe L. Internal report pending was moved to a new drawer. This one was labeled Unresolved Open Status. A week later, a new nurse arrived, fresh from training, full of optimism. She was told not to park in the back lot. The space was being resurfaced. But she got turned around, ended up behind the old shed lot anyway. She stepped out of her car, unsure, and then she paused. The wind was calm. The lot was still. But something made her stop, just before stepping over the old grate. Something made her look down. She saw nothing, but her chest tightened. Her hand instinctively gripped her lanyard badge. And for a moment, she felt like someone was watching from below. She took a step back and walked toward the main entrance, heart racing.